welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity. This is Sean Martin, your host, where if you listen to the show, you know I get to talk to cool people in cyber, doing cool things in cyber, and that's exactly the case today. I'm thrilled to have Tera Ladner on from Aflac. How are you, Tera?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm fabulous. It's a good day in cyber. I get to talk about all kinds of cool things, and we're going to talk about leadership in cybersecurity and finding that path into this career, and take a look at the work you've done and the role you have, and I'm excited to hear your story and to share it with our folks. Listen, CISOs and practitioners up and down the chain of cyber. So let's start with maybe an overview of your current role, and then we'll take a look back into how you arrived there.
Sure. So currently I'm the Deputy Chief Global Information Security Officer at Aflac. And that's a little bit of a different deputy role than some deputies. Some deputies in programs I learned just own certain portions of the program. In my role, everyone in security reports up through me, and then I report to our global CISO.
And is that a big, I don't know how much you can share, but is it a fairly sizable group? I don't know how many departments you're looking after?
Yeah, we have about 200 people in our U.S. program.
That's fantastic. All right, so you don't wake up one day and start managing 200 cyber professionals. How did you get started? What was your role initially?
So my initial start into this world was really about information management, understanding information, understanding the value of information, understand the risks and the costs behind information. This was all around, well, we'll say it wasn't this long ago, but it was about 27 years ago, especially with Sarbanes-Oxley was happening, the advent of the iPod, when the information explosion was just happening. Companies were really grappling with how to manage that much information. And so I moved into that career path, which led me kind of into an e-discovery path. I went to law school during that journey. And then I moved into more of the information security focus, really understanding information and how to protect it properly.
And I'm going to start here with the connection to legal and the legal space. I often think there are a number of parallels where the legal team, be it inside or outside counsel, or are really there to guide the organization along a safe path, right, to achieve an outcome, whether it be a contract or onboarding a new team member, whatever it is, a dispute of a case, whatever it is, getting from A to Z in the most safe way possible. I feel cybersecurity has a similar role. What's your take on that, and how much, if any, how much of what you learned and did in the legal realm carries over to what you're working on now?
Well, honestly, what they teach you in law school is a different way of thinking. No one can walk out of law school understanding every law and regulation that exists. And so it's that different way of thinking. And so when I look at a security program, I think about the controls. What controls should be in place? Can I evidence those controls? Can I support what we're doing as a program? Can I defend what we're doing as a program, either from a litigation or regulatory perspective? And so when I look at a security program, I look at it from the perspective of controls, and I look at it from the perspective of risk. And, it really becomes kind of a people-centric conversation and an action-centric conversation as opposed to a technology-centric conversation. So I think that when you take the different experiences I've had in my career, and then you layer that with an understanding of law and how you have to look at things from a legal regulatory perspective, I really think that kind of balances out my ability to see the program, to align it to business perspectives, and to make sure that I can defend the program and the actions that we're taking within the program.
And so many things in my mind here. So entering this space, and even just technology in the broader sense, but certainly in cybersecurity, it's either easy to get wrapped around the axle on this is cyber, right? And you mentioned the business, and it's easy to forget that we're doing this for the business and get wrapped up in what is the risk. Even risk, right, is hopefully for the business, but even looking at it from a risk perspective, we're down to the controls, down to the threats, how are we going to build the program, how are we going to put a team. It gets really complicated really quickly, and you kind of lose sight of, one can lose sight of that. And especially entering this field, we're a lot of the online tools are how to hack and how to find vulnerabilities, and it's all tech and cyber oriented. And I guess it has to be, but I guess how did you navigate that world to kind of keep clearly the business focus that you have while understanding the technical and cyber aspects that are required?
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting perspectives that I bring coming from kind of a non-traditional technical background. I didn't grow up through that area, so I had to have an understanding of risk and people and communication and business strategy. And so when I go to my business leaders, I really start with listening. And I don't start right away talking about controls or threats. I start with asking them, what are your business goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Because what's important is whether it's growth in a new market or delivering a better customer experience or even strengthening just operational resiliency, I have to be able to speak to them in a way that shows security as an enabler of that. Because ultimately, I mean, we're not in the business of cybersecurity. While we're very serious and take cybersecurity very seriously at Aflac, that's not our business model. Our business model is to serve our policyholders. And so I have to align what I'm doing to those business enablers to make sure that my leaders understand that I'm here to support them and enable them to do what they do so well.
And doing that so well is another area that I think has a lot, certainly these days has a lot of connection to the world of cyber, certainly with policies. But insurance is in the business of looking at risk and how to mitigate that and avoid having an incident, hopefully, and having to pay out a claim because one occurred.
Right.
So how does that world kind of shape what you do, and are you able to leverage and benefit? Do you have an advantage, I guess, working for an insurance company to help you run your programs?
Well, I mean, when you work for an insurance company, I think people naturally understand the conversation of risk. And it is really about risk and decision making and being able to influence decisions. And so risk is kind of an underlying principle that all of my business leaders, all of my stakeholders, all of my partners understand. So when I'm able to talk about risk, and sometimes that's accepting the risk or mitigating the risk, it's not always completely getting rid of the risk. I think that it resonates well with them. And so again, having that non-traditional technical background, but bringing those skill sets forward that allow me to translate, okay, this thing is happening over here from a technology perspective. I understand it, but I don't expect my business leaders to understand that. I think my unique skill set is to be able to translate that thing that's happening into how does that impact us? How does that What could that look like from a security perspective? What could that look like from a resiliency perspective? All of that matters when we need to keep our operations running and we need to make sure that we can service our policyholders. And
I presume every CISO I talk to is part of some community where they get to talk to each other and compare notes on where things are headed, where we're struggling with each moment in the day, and what technologies do we use? How do we keep our team active and healthy and all that good stuff? How much of those conversations can it come back to finding the right people for your team and growing the right team to hopefully allow you to move up and fill your shoes to take on what you're working on?
Yeah, we talk a lot about that. I'm lucky enough to have some really strong connections in the industry. I belong to a lot of groups based in Atlanta The Atlanta CISO community is so supportive and always willing to reach out and help with whatever, topic you may be grappling with that day. And it's also a small community, so there are lots of people who will call around and say, hey, do you know somebody looking in this space or that space? But the team and building a team is I think, one of the most important jobs for a leader in cybersecurity. You've got to have the right people. You've got to have the right culture. They've got to come in with the right attitude, because in those moments when something does happen or when you have a problem in security, you got to be able to look to the people left and right and know you can trust them and know that you can depend on them. And so building a very strong team is probably my highest priority, day in and day out. But yes, as we look across, there are lots of conversations about how do we build the pipeline of talent? How do we make sure we're bringing the right diverse perspectives to the table? What are the different areas that we can pull from where we're getting good talent? So we share a lot of that in those different communities that I'm in.
And when you're looking for talent, because we talked about your unique experiences and perspectives and training and your career leading you to this point has shaped who you are and what you're able to do. Somebody just starting out doesn't have that experience yet.
Right.
And I think one of the first things you mentioned was kind of shaping how you think, right, in the legal sense. You don't know everything that's coming your way. The real training comes in how do you tackle something when it comes up. You don't know what it is. So how do you two ways of looking at this, and hopefully you can share both their thoughts. How do you look for people who have that? What kind of are there experiences they have, things on their resume, things they answer in interview, and then how would you perhaps suggest people get that experience of thinking differently if it's not naturally there for them to get it?
Yeah, I think the first answer is easier, right? I always say that the first skill set I look for in anyone I ever interview is curiosity. Do you have that curious and analytical mind? Do you ask a question and then you ask the second question and then you ask the third question? Because that's really where the information comes from, is that third and fourth and fifth question, where you're starting to put pieces together and really understand, okay, this is bigger than the technology we're talking about. This is what's happening to our end user experience. This is how it's impacting that other system. We have to be willing to dig deep and understand what's really happening before we can solve a problem. The second piece is, and I tell my technology teams this all the time, if you're looking to grow, you've got to get those basic skill sets. You've got to figure out how to build those skill sets. You've got to be a storyteller if you want to be a leader in security. You've got to be able to connect those technical conversations to business pieces, as we talked about earlier. You got to be willing to build relationships. I could not be successful in my role if I didn't have very strong relationships across my stakeholders, my friends in legal, my friends in compliance, my friends in the business. I have to have those. You have to be able to influence, because I don't always have authority over the decisions that need to be made. They're owned by our technology division or they're owned by the division. I have to go and be able to influence their decisions. I don't own the decisions. You gotta navigate ambiguity, especially with frontier AI models right now. We're all navigating ambiguity. There's, the media hype, there's conversations coming from our technology leaders, the board's asking questions. You've got to be able to navigate and say, here's what we think. We don't know yet, but here's what we're doing to prepare for it. So you've got to build those various skill sets along the way while keeping your technical skills, honed in on. But I think you have to have those skill sets to be able to be successful in a leadership position in security where we are here and now. I think those technical skills were enough years ago. I just don't know that they're enough anymore.
Yeah, I'm smiling because you've said two things in particular that really resonate with me. The first is kind of the curiosity and asking the next question. A very good friend, Laz, former CISO again as well, who would always say, well, what's your question, Sean? And then I'd ask the question, he'd say, why? And then again, why? And then again, why? And then again, why? And he'd think, well, how many whys? And until he didn't feel that another why was necessary, he would keep asking. And it was a phenomenal thing where you'd end up. And you do this with a lot of people. And the other is the ambiguity thing. And I'll go back to my manager when I was at Symantec, and she said to me, Sean, you'll be successful if you can identify and manage ambiguity for your team. Because similar to you as a product and program manager, you manage through influence. You have no direct control, right? So you have to guide people, and you have to look for those potholes and work through the unknowns and help make the decisions that either become indecisions or wrong decisions, which take you down a path or not take you down a path that's bad. So all of that said, because you talked also about storytelling, which is near and dear to my heart, hence the podcast. And I think those things together touch on the other point that you made around culture. So my question is, how do you create a culture that supports your team, ensures you can run a program that's successful, and does it in a way that meets the expectations of the executive leadership team and the board? All three very different things, right?
Right. But I really do think they all three come from the same place. As a leader, it's my job to build a culture among the team. I always tell my people leaders, your team lives in the house that you build. And so it's up to me to set that stage for the team that I'm trying to build. And so we have some, pretty clear team norms that we live by. We live by transparency. We say what we mean and we mean what we say. And we don't, sugarcoat or cover up anything. We are very transparent with each other. We have the very hard conversations. We have lots of hard conversations behind closed doors. But when we come out as a leadership team, we are all aligned and we are all supportive of the decisions that's made. We work with absolute integrity. Again, we are true to what we say we can deliver, and when we realize we can't meet those expectations, we're very clear as quick as we can be. And we work respecting each other and caring about each other and holding each other up in those moments when it's hard. I mean, we work in a hard industry. You know this. It's a tough day-to-day industry to work in. And so if we're not supporting each other and we're not taking care of each other and we're not keeping that human part of doing a job at the forefront, we can't build that kind of culture. And so it's important to me to have leadership days where we don't do anything but we talk about how we communicate and what our team norms should be, and make sure that we're all aligned and getting to know each other and building that trust that we need in those moments that are hard. We do a lot of continuing to review that and going back to it. We do a lot of program management in our world. We set clear expectations of what we're going to deliver, and then we measure ourselves against those so that we make sure we're holding each other accountable. And so we just really focus on making sure that we have a people-centric culture in our program. And at Aflac in general. I mean, Dan Amos always says, and I'm probably not going to say it correctly, that you take care of your people and they will take care of your company, and thus our policyholders. And so I really believe that. If I take care of my people, they'll take care of what they should be doing to protect our company.
Yeah, and in there, I'm hearing, and I'm going to presume you can confirm, that you give people a voice. Because I think for years, the role of cyber has battled to emerge from being the Department of No to being connected to the business, having a seat at the table, the executive leadership team, having exposure to the board to talk about the big things that really matter. And so just in the context of the role of cyber in business, getting a voice has been difficult. You have an extra special getting a voice, and I'm super happy to see you in that seat. Talk to me about how, and obviously it comes from leadership, but presenting yourself and maybe some guidance for others looking to excel in this career, to find the right place to have their voice, and how best to present that voice, to establish that respect, to establish the integrity, and to have those conversations.
I really honestly believe it is relationship building. I spend a lot of my time very intentional with building those key relationships and making sure that I'm sustaining those key relationships, and not in a fake way, in a very in a very real way. I want to know who my stakeholders are. I want to know what they care about, want to know what they're grappling with on a day-to-day basis, because then I think it's easier for me to help them understand what we're grappling with. And so when you say, find a voice with them, you also have to give them a voice with you. But you have to be willing to let them speak to you. And as I said earlier, you have to be willing to listen. And you have to understand that they're coming with their own goals and their own performance issues and their own, various problems that they're trying to solve. And you got to be a partner in that. You can't come in and say, yeah, but I'm security, bonk them on the head and tell them that they've got to do this or that. You've got to meet them where they are. And I think that the more you work to build key relationships and the more you work to really have strong relationships with your various stakeholders, the easier all of that becomes. But as I said, you can't only ask for a place at the table. You also have to give them a place at your table.
And I was trying to figure out a fun way to connect it to the table analogy, but not everybody thinks they should have a place at the table. The industry is filled with imposter syndrome. Let's be honest, it's a world filled with crusty old white dudes, right? And so how do you see a way for young women of any age, I guess, to find that space at the table? Are there programs you've been involved with or groups that you can recommend?
Yeah, I can certainly talk about that. I'll start with a funny story. I always tell people that, first of all, I am a woman in cybersecurity. That's unique. And then you add on top of that I'm extremely extroverted. So there are many times I'll go into meetings and look around and see one or two women in the room. So of course I'm extremely outgoing. I want to meet people. I'll walk up to a table and say, hey, how's it going? And you can just see people visibly kind of lean back, like, why is this woman talking to us? So I experienced that a good bit. And so I really wanted to think about why women don't see a path to security. And I do think it's because we kind of come from this place where we think we have to be, technologist or someone who really wanted to grow up and take a computer apart and put it back together and understand all of the things it does. But that's not true. There are so many diverse perspectives that are needed in cybersecurity. You think about people who train and how important making sure our users understand how their behavior can impact security. That's a whole training and awareness and changing the culture of the business to be a security-focused culture. That's a whole different skill set than someone who can run technology. So there's so many places. You think about like our governance teams and audit backgrounds. There's so many ways to get into cyber and to be successful in cyber. So I'll talk a little bit about a program that we created and we kind of picked up from our Northern Ireland team. There's a program called Empower Girls that was started over in England. And it was really about building this day that will bring these young women together to allow them to see that they can have a path into security. And so having attended one of those in Belfast at our Northern Ireland team's request, I brought that concept back to the U.S. and we started a program called Cyber Inspire. And Cyber Inspire, one track is about, we go into the schools, we go into our local schools about once a week, honestly, at the middle and high school level, and talk to all kids, all upcoming adults about what it looks like to be a part of a cybersecurity program, what their different paths are, in addition to being safe online and making sure that we're doing things the way we should when we're on a computer. And then the next one would be Empower Girls. And so for the last 2 years here in our local area, We've brought together, the first year it was 200. This year, I'm so proud to say it was 815 girls. We brought them together for a full day with some of our cybersecurity technology partners coming in, setting up booths, playing games, letting them understand what cybersecurity is about, showing them that you can attach cybersecurity careers to things that you already love. And then, of course, just making it a fun day for them so that they felt engaged with the content. I can't remember the exact percentage, but I can tell you at the beginning of the day, we didn't have that many girls who were interested in a career. At the end of the day, we had a very large amount of girls who were interested in the career. And then we have another track in our Cyber Inspire program where we go into our local senior communities to help teach seniors how to be safe online as well.
So cool. And congratulations. That's super successful.
Probably one of my greatest accomplishments.
200 to 800. That's that says something. That says something.
Yeah.
And that is inspiring. And I don't know, I'll say it now. Maybe we have another chat with maybe a couple of the girls that found something fun to do. And I'd love to hear their stories with you on with them. And I want to go back to, and we'll wrap here in a moment, but kind of the diversity of skills and the diversity of way of thinking, and because you touched on just the whole awareness training. And, just before we started recording, I was on with some folks out of Oxford who are doing human research, research on human psychology and cybersecurity. And it's such an important piece, so not technology. An important piece that I guess, there's a lot of different ways to find a path in. And I think being curious is, to your point, the first step to see, well, maybe something I have seen or have heard or have trained in could apply. And I think asking that first question, and then the why, and then the why, could lead you to a path. And it's good that you have programs like the ones you're working on to give people a place to have those conversations, ask those questions, get those whys out there. I want to give you a moment to maybe kind of wrap with some thoughts for your fellow cybersecurity executives in this world.
I would love to see more organizations come together and us really focus on bringing those diverse backgrounds into cybersecurity. I think a lot of times we spend too much time looking within our own community because we're looking for someone who's been vetted or someone who has the experience we need. But we've got to be very intentional about making sure we have pipelines, because we're going to kind of run out of our own after a while. And I'm not sure that newer generations are as excited about a technology or a cyber field as maybe earlier. So I think we got to focus there and be intentional there. The other thing I'd say is make sure that we're talking to our teams about building their tool belt. I talk about this a lot with my team. And, back in the day, I remember when we were in high school, we were like, why will we ever need algebra? And it's easy to say, I shouldn't learn that thing, or I shouldn't take that class, or I shouldn't attend and be a part of that project because that'll never fit. You don't ever know what's going to fit. You don't ever know when you need to have this huge tool belt of all these skill sets and pull one out. You'll say, oh, I knew something about that, and pull it out and use it. So let's make sure that we're expanding our team's knowledge and focusing on leadership, focusing on influence, focusing on storytelling even, focusing on the other skill sets that they will need to continue to grow outside of just, making sure they're taking their technical training. We've got to, as leaders, remember that to grow into the positions we're in, you've got to have all those skill sets. And so if we're not influencing our teams and challenging our teams and frankly supporting them with the resources that they need to be able to build those skill sets, then we're doing them a disservice, knowing that that's really what they're going to need in the future.
Tera, you're amazing. I'm so glad we had a chance to connect. It took us a couple hours to get this scheduled, maybe in the form of weeks, but I'm so glad that we had this chance to have this chat. And you're welcome back anytime, and hopefully we get to talk about the Empower Girls program at some point. And,
yeah, I would love that.
And I wish you and all the CISOs success. It's a tough role. I joke that it's a role that I wouldn't want. So, and I admire you and honor you and cherish you for taking on that role and protecting our information in the broader society of the digital age that we live in. So, all right, Tera, thank you so much. And everybody listening, I encourage you to connect with Tera and follow her on LinkedIn and the work she's doing. And yeah, hopefully folks will be inspired to listen to this. I certainly was. Thank you very much.